Welcome to the Chase Challenge Week 21. This week's reading begins with David saying, God be exalted, you be exalted. David had related to God as his creator, his father, and his king, and David wanted to express his desire for God to be exalted over himself, over his own kingdom. Now, ironically, David became known as Israel's greatest king. We still talk about David as a man after God's own heart. But David's heart was that God would be exalted, not him. But David's son felt a different way. David had made it very clear to all of Israel's leaders that Solomon was to be the next king of Israel. Now, Solomon was his son through Bathsheba. Not only was he God's choice for being the next king, but he was God's choice for building the temple. And David had made that clear to Israel's leaders. But Adonijah, one of David's other sons, decides to exalt himself. And he gets it into his head that he is going to be the next king of Israel. He's older than Solomon. He is more experienced than Solomon. He seems like he is the better choice of the king, and he is not the only one that agrees with that assessment. No. Some of David's inner circle, the guys that had been loyal to David his whole life, now, at the end of his life, when David is sick in bed and near death, they turn on David and they align themselves with David's son, Adonijah. But someone intervenes. Someone steps in at the risk of his or her own life, and they do something brave in order to establish Solomon as king and not Adonijah. Who is that person? Who stepped out and took a risk, which resulted in Solomon becoming king? Now, David's last words to Solomon are very important, and I want you to notice that this week. He tells Solomon some very important last words about God's purpose for his life. And he passes on to Solomon the promises that God had given to him. But he told Solomon that there was a conditional part of the promise. He told Solomon, if you do this, then this will happen. God will do this. If you do this, then God will do this. There was a conditional part of God's promise to David that could not be fulfilled unless David's descendants, who sat on the throne, would cooperate. Their choices would affect the extent of God's promises to David. So what is it? I want you to look very closely. What promise had God made David that could not be fulfilled unless Solomon and his descendants did what? What did they need to do in order for this promise to be fulfilled? Look for that this week. Solomon begins his reign by recognizing that he's inexperienced. He recognizes that he's young, and so he looks to God. He goes up to Gibeon where the tabernacle is, and God appears to him in a dream. And God says to him this, ask, what shall I give you? Now, as God is saying this to Solomon, it is a reminder to Solomon and to all of us that God is the one who is able to give abundantly more than we can ever ask or imagine. He is the source of everything Solomon needed, everything we need, and everything that Solomon would need to succeed as king and to rule and reign. God told Solomon, ask me, because I'm the one who can give it to you. I am able. I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I have the ability as creator to give you anything you ask for. It belongs to me. I, as your father, have the desire to bless you and give you what you ask for and even more. And I, as your king, know what is best to give you. Look to me. I'm your source. Look to me for everything that you need. And this encounter is a beautiful encounter as we see that God gives Solomon what he's asked for and even more. But this is the part that we often miss in this narrative. As Solomon is establishing his authority, he is establishing himself as king and growing his kingdom, expanding his territory and strengthening his kingdom as any king would. We learn that the extent of his kingdom was the greatest that Israel had ever experienced. Solomon's kingdom went all the way to the east as far as the Euphrates River. And then it extended far to the southwest. But I want you to pay attention to this. To what country did Solomon look to strengthen his kingdom and bring peace to his kingdom? Remember, God is saying, look to me, Solomon. Ask me. I can do this. I can do this for you. But Solomon looks somewhere else. He creates an alliance with this country. What country does he create an alliance with? And how does he create that alliance? The second thing is he looks to this country to provide thousands of chariots and tens of thousands of horses. And you might be thinking, okay, big deal, that's great. You read right through it and okay, he's establishing his kingdom. It's growing, it's big, it's strong. He's making these alliances. That's what kings should do, right? God is blessing Solomon. But look back to what David had told Solomon on his deathbed. What did David say? And then relate it to what God told Moses in Deuteronomy. Maybe you've heard the saying, what you don't know can't hurt you. Have you already forgotten what God told Moses in Deuteronomy 17:16? Go back, look it up. What does Deuteronomy 17:16 say? And how does what Solomon chooses to do relate to the law of Moses? Where did Solomon begin to look? Did he not know what God had said in the law of Moses? Or had he forgotten it? Or did he know what God had said and he chose to ignore it? Before we come down too hard on Solomon, we need to ask ourselves these same questions. As we are living our lives and going on day to day, do our lives exalt God? Are we living in obedience to Him and how He has designed us to live? Some of us are living in ignorance and we are living our lives because we never knew how God told us to live. Some of us knew it at one point, but we forgot. And some of us know what God is telling us to do and we willfully choose not to do it. My challenge for you this week is to exalt the Lord by looking to Him to meet your every need. Ask, He says, what can I give to you? I want to give you everything you need and more. I'm your creator. I'm your father. I'm your king. I am for you and I am able to bless you. I promise you. You will never be sorry that you look to the Lord to meet your every need and to provide for your every need. May we keep chasing after Him as He is chasing after us, exalting His name, not our own, and looking to Him to meet our every need. Keep looking into what God's Word says. Don't forget what His Word says. and live according to it. I'll see you next week.